What is up and welcome back to Working Hard. Today's guest is someone you may remember from one of our most listened to episodes of last year, Sarah Ashcroft. Sarah is one of the original fashion creators in the UK, and in our last episode she took us through her journey turning her online presence into the fashion powerhouse that was SLA The Label. But since then, a lot has changed. In February this year, Sarah announced that SLA was closing for good. This episode is the first time that she's speaking on a podcast about that situation, what led to it, how it felt to walk away from something she'd built from the ground up, and what she's learned in the months since. This is a conversation about identity, pressure, clarity, and the harsh reality of running a business in public. It is raw, it is very reflective, and it's going to resonate with anyone who's ever had to make a difficult decision or gone through a huge life change. And I'm so incredibly grateful to Sarah for choosing our podcast to speak to about exactly this. Can I just say that this would not have been an easy thing to talk about at all. And not only has she not spoken about the ins and outs of this publicly, but being able to come on and really speak so transparently about what went wrong, what should have been different, and exactly what happened and what you wouldn't expect happens at liquidation, I feel like is exactly what we need to hear. Because unless founders are open and honest, unless people talk transparently about what things they actually go through, we cannot learn. And I think that it is hugely generous of her to be so open and honest about this, especially when she doesn't need to, and especially when she's been through something so traumatic and such a huge life change. So props to Sarah, and I feel so grateful that she felt comfortable to come to speak to us about it. Of course, before we get into my chat with Sarah, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe to my channel. The deal is that you subscribe and I put out a super interesting episode about lots of different things every single Monday to help you improve your life and start your week on the right foot. Sarah Ashcroft, are you currently more working hard or hardly working?
I think we're going to have to go with hardly working, aren't we?
I love that.
She's unemployed.
You're not unemployed.
It's fine. I'm right.
And we'll go straight into it then, because I feel like we have so much to talk about.
We do.
If you could sum up the last few months in a few words, how would you describe it?
Oh, I mean, weirdly now, relief, but I would say probably disbelief. You know, when you can't quite believe what you've gone through, that's probably the biggest word to describe everything, because it's just been a lot in a short space of time that it's kind of like, I feel like now I've come out the other side of it, I'm a little bit like, wow, did that all just happen?
Right, like you've been through a blender.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, because I think that there are always periods of time that you go through that you come out the other end and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, what did I just face? And I feel like what you've obviously been through is a little bit complex in that a lot of these times are like super busy because of one reason, or super intense because of another personal reason, or whatever it might be. And I feel like, I mean, I assume you didn't know what it was like to go through what you've just been through. So there'll be so much that you're processing, as well as having to deal with that in public, having to just be like, what am I doing now?
Yeah.
And I can imagine there's like so many emotions around that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the fear of like losing the business, I had that for so long that actually I just needed an end point, no matter what the end point was. So I think actually making the decision to put it into liquidation, weirdly, the relief came almost instantly the moment I made that decision, because the emotions and everything leading up to it in the months beforehand were so horrific. And I was mentally in such a bad place that it was weird how I thought that doing the worst thing, which was to me putting the business into liquidation, actually ended up being the best thing. To an extent, because instantly, it was almost like overnight, I just felt myself like breathe.
Yeah.
So it was like the thing I was so afraid of doing actually was what needed to happen the whole time.
Right, absolutely. And I really want to go into that. Before we do, for anyone who didn't listen to the last episode and kind of doesn't know about your journey, could you give us a brief kind of overview of your journey starting SLA, kind of up to now, and then we'll go into really what's happened in the past 12 months.
Yeah, for sure. So I started SLA back in 2019, and I did it. It's funny, I look at the way I started SLA now very differently to potentially how I looked at it before, because I started it, I think, because it felt like I needed to, not because I actually wanted to.
Okay.
which is weird because I feel like when you go through what I've gone through, you do evaluate and rethink through everything. And I started the brand because I had the collections that I had within the style, which I had for like 2 years. And then obviously didn't enjoy that anymore. And I was like, I want to do my own thing. Started SLA, but I kind of did it like most founders, I think. I didn't have an absolute clue what I was doing. But looking back on it, it was so chaotic constantly because I really didn't have a clue what I was doing. So, you know, we launched and we started as loungewear, and we were loungewear for like 2 years. And then we like ping-ponged around doing like swimwear. Then we moved into like glitter. And actually, when you kind of look at the journey of SLA, it was hectic. And I think only now when I look back on it, I kind of not see why it failed, because it didn't fail because it was hectic. But the lessons that I've learned through the journey of SLA, I feel like I would do everything so differently now.
Right.
I can't explain it. It's sort of like, although I'm so proud of what SLA was and what I turned it into, I can kind of see why it failed. I don't know how to, it's hard to explain that, but it just felt like the whole time I felt like I was like holding my breath.
Right. Right. Well, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
And like, it's really, I think that if I, for example, had a few months to step away from Tala, I think I would have a lot more clarity on what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the big downfalls of being a founder, is that you are so busy and you shouldn't be so busy. Like, I've heard so many things out there of kind of, you can't be a good founder or you can't be running a company well if you're actually busy.
Yeah.
Because if you're busy, you're not making the right decisions, you're not spending enough time on things, you're not spending enough time on the business and working out the trajectory and the strategy and all of that. But that's not a liberty that's really afforded to you as a founder, because as a founder, literally all you're doing is fighting fires all the time. So it's like, yes, I know I would be better at my job if I had less to do. At the same time, I don't know how to get from where I am now to being at the point where everything runs better to the point that I have less to do.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's what I should do. I know I should be delegating more. I don't know how to get from this point to this point in order to be able to make better decisions and see things more from a bird's eye view.
Yeah. I feel like, I think I would always say to people before I lost SLA that I was kind of like, you know, if you want to start a business, just start. Like, you don't really need to know what you're doing. You can kind of wing it. But I kind of now am thinking, I don't know if I believe that.
Sure.
I feel like I think everyone, if they've got an idea, should start it. I'm so all for that. But I think there actually is potentially more legwork that needs to go into something before you start a business, whether it's even just like trying to find other founders that you can like ask advice from, or, you know, taking a course on like even just the most simple things like how to market a product or how to, you know, deal with a supplier. There's just things that potentially maybe you need to know before you start these things.
Right.
Because I think there is that thing online where everyone's just like, oh, just start. You'll work it out as you go. And I kind of feel like I'm maybe a bit the poster girl for like, that doesn't actually always work out.
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely, there will be people who started who knew absolutely nothing, and it went at the right pace in order that they were able to make mistakes at a slower rate so that it was less fatal to the business. I also think that like we always talk about how many benefits there are to having a quote unquote influencer business, right? Like, you're not given this audience, you build the audience that you're then selling to, so you know them really well. But there is a ready-made audience. They're kind of there. That probably meant that you had to scale the business quicker than it was maybe ready for, because I know I definitely did this. I had to scale the business quicker than it was ready for, because if I didn't, then like, what am I doing selling 100 units of something, because people are going to be so angry the second that is out of stock. And so you suddenly need to act as a business that has been around for a good few years when you haven't actually yet made the mistakes of a business that's been around that time. So maybe just start is also more of something that people get when you can start and go slow.
And control it.
Right.
You actually, to be fair, you're so right. Like, I think the way you put it is so accurate in the sense that SLA was like propelled. Like, you know, when it's like, you probably the same thing where we launched and everything sold out in 24 hours. And that was obviously so exciting when it first launched. And then, but it's almost like that instant success constantly for like 2 years was like this growth that I didn't know how to control, because I didn't know what I was doing and I was massively winging it at the time. And then it just, I feel like when I look back on the SLA journey now, the entire 6 years felt very like I was just chasing this like ball that just kept growing.
Right.
And the growth wasn't planned ever. And so it was just kind of like trying to keep up with it all. It's just, yeah. And I think also the thing as well with SLA is we went viral so many times without planning to, and I think that growth as well caused problems, because that's kind of when the manufacturer issues came in, and that's obviously like led to the downturn of SLA was the manufacturer issues. So I think had we maybe not had all those viral moments and these like huge kind of like unexpected quick growth, it might be a different story.
And it's so funny you say that, because I reckon anyone listening to this who has a business, the one thing they want right now is for one of their products to go viral.
Yeah, I know.
Like one of their products to go viral and take off. And like, don't get me wrong, it's a luxury. Like it's a privilege to have it happen, and it's amazing. At the same time, if you build a business, and I had to restructure my entire business and nearly lost it in the process, like weeks upon weeks of being, not knowing if we were going to make payroll. And so much of that was because you're building it on a business where actually it's not a steady, well-built, well-structured
the foundations just are not there.
Exactly. Like maybe it's meant to go slower. Like if things are going slower for you at the moment, I almost think it's a good lesson in like, why is this going slower? Like, what is it teaching you that you need to be slower to learn well so that you don't run before you can walk?
Yeah.
And I think there was so much of that like I wish I'd learned.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good point, because the amount of people that will have looked at your stuff when it was going viral and been like, oh my God, like what do I need to do to get that type of traction at the moment? And of course it's a privilege, but at the same time, grass isn't always greener.
No, and I think, the whole like 10 years to overnight success, I think that is actually something that founders and business owners and whatever business it is, you kind of maybe want to hang on to more. And that's what I think is hard at the moment, because I think social media has created this like pressure for no reason, because you see these success stories and you see these like overnight successes, and that does happen for some people. But actually, I think the long game and having a sustainable growth and like really understanding like where you're taking your business and why it's growing and your plans for the growth is actually so valuable. And I think if I was to start another business now, I would want everything to go very slowly. So I think there's nothing like if whoever like is watching or listening to this is feeling like their business feels like everything is going a bit slower, as long as there's success behind that sort of steady pace, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because it's controlled.
Right.
And you're in control of it, And I just think, because feeling out of control running a business is horrible. It's horrible.
So let's get into it.
Yeah.
You made the decision to close SLA earlier this year. As far as you can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so I mean, it was probably like a year in the making, and this was why the last year was so hard, because literally everything was happening at once. Like I had the breakup and the business literally side by side. Whether, being in that breakup headspace made it worse as well, because obviously mentally I was dealing with that, also dealing with my business starting to fail. And it was like, I don't know if I was off my game as well. But I mean, whatever it was, it happened the way that it happened. But unfortunately, so what really happened was we had a manufacturer that we'd been working with for almost a year. So it's not like they were new. And we placed probably one of our like biggest orders for a restock of our core collection. So all of our bestsellers. And when I mean all of our bestsellers, I mean literally everything. So everything that makes the business money was reordered. And because it was a reorder, and this is something that actually I've learned massively from, when the stock arrived into the warehouse, we just put it online. Because we've worked with them before. They've made this stuff before. I didn't think that I needed to check the stock. Lesson number one, I will always check any stock now, because I'd never go through it again. The product went online. It only took probably like a couple of days for us to realise there was an issue, because we started having customer emails complaining about, it was as wild as like we'd had like something with it was black and it was supposed to have black diamantes and it had like red diamantes on it.
Right.
Like everything that was wrong with it was wrong with it. We had fabric that was 30 grams lighter than the approved fabric, and also a completely different composition. I actually got in an argument with the manufacturer at the start and was like, I know this is different. They were lying literally the whole time. So I sent the fabric to a fabric lab to get it tested because I was like, I know I'm so right about this.
Yeah.
So I was literally like, it's giving like girl detective.
Because I've had it before where I've literally been like, this one's slimier.
Exactly.
I was like, it doesn't have the same
this
feel.
is a different fabric. So I literally sent it off it was a different composition, a different way, everything. But even having that level of like proof, we still didn't have a leg to stand on. We had like Paloma blazers, which was the glitter blazer that we did, that was literally measuring like 6 to 7 centimeters out of spec.
Wow.
Like it was shocking how bad this production was. But the issue that we had was it went online. And so legally, it was like we were selling the product. So that's what caused the sort of like issue. So anyway, obviously, as soon as we realized there was an issue, we refunded any customers that had the problem, took all of the stock offline, because that was my instant reaction, was like, I need to take everything off the website because it's all wrong. But obviously the problem, which I didn't realize, but also I was like, I wasn't going to jeopardize the brand name, so I was kind of left with no choice, is then cash flow just completely stopped, because we took all of our best sellers. Everything that made us money had to come off the website. But I also wasn't about to sell products that was that bad to my customers. So it was kind of like, it was a lose-lose.
It's a rock and a hard place,
lose-lose.
because also what could have happened if you hadn't had such integrity and been like, I wouldn't want to do this. Even from a business perspective, those customers who might have converted for the first time, the lifetime value of a customer is usually a few orders.
Exactly.
If they're not coming back, it
was almost like no matter which way I was going to turn with it, it was going to fail, right? So the other problem, we had obviously all that manufacturer stuff going, and this went on for like 8 months. We didn't have our best sellers back on the website until this was happening in like February, March. We didn't get any of our best sellers back on the website until literally like September. And during that time, obviously, you can imagine it was a nightmare because there was just no money. There was no money for anything. But also, it was like the perfect storm, because I also had a fractional CFO who obviously, like, it's really sad in business, and I think this happens a lot, where you bring people in that you believe are a hire to help you and actually just completely jeopardize the business. We had it, and actually my story, especially with fractional CFOs or fractional people that come in, is not unique, because they come in almost like they just want the paycheck. They're not really invested in the business because they work like 1-2 days a week. And this is quite like technical for people that maybe don't understand the fashion business, but I'm going to say it for people that do. So basically, like you're open to buy. Mm-hmm. So he got hold of this, which apparently as well, after speaking to so many people, like your merchandisers should be the only people that are looking at the OTB, because it's like that's their job. Mm-hmm. So he basically decided that instead of us ordering like 3,000 units of something, he had us ordering 200 units, right? Like overnight. And I, at the time, didn't think anything of it, because when someone who's come in to do like the finance stuff is telling you that this is what we're going to do because it's going to help the business, you take it as Bible. You're like, cool, I'm not the finance person.
You have the self-awareness to know that like this isn't your role.
Exactly. And I was like, trust it. I do put a lot of trust in people who work for me, because up until that point had actually been fine. Not only did it reduce the units, but our stock cover went from literally like 18 to like 20 weeks all the way down to 12 weeks, which I now, looking back on it, our production takes longer than 12 weeks to be made. So we had like a Zara like lead. It was wild. Yeah. So it's like, why did we have stock cover that didn't even cover the amount of time it takes for our product to even reach us?
Yeah, especially for bestsellers.
Yeah. And so it was like, and then so obviously we had all the nightmare going on with the stock, but then any new stuff that came in, which people loved, sold out because we had 200 units of it. So then it was like we had literally nothing to sell, because it was like the CFOs told us, reduce your units, reduce your cover. But then we've had the shitstorm of the manufacturer happen at the same time. So, okay, I know the CFO potentially didn't see the shitstorm of the manufacturer stuff, but had we had the protection of other stock, we might be in a different position.
It was a perfect storm, for sure.
So it really was like, I completely agree that there are certain things that I definitely could have done differently, and I'm not an innocent party in the breakdown of the business at all, but I do feel like a lot of it was completely out of my control. It was outside influences, and that's what I think makes it so sad, because when I was solely running it before I bought in a seat, because I very much am like high risk, high reward. That's how I just live life. And I was always like, yeah, this is great. Order like 5,000 users, do 9,000 of that because it's amazing. And actually, when I was doing that, we were so successful. And it was like someone came in and was like, calm yourself down. Let's be more sensible. And it completely fucked out.
Oh, it's so tough. And it's a story that I've heard so many times, sadly. Like, as in, I don't say that being like, oh yeah, that's special. Like, as in, but like the amount of times I have heard of like, oh, even recently, there are businesses that are doing incredibly, incredibly well where I've had a conversation with the founder and it's been like, oh yeah, well, someone came in and I brought them in because that's not my strength. Yeah. And then it was something that they did. Again, often interim people and often female founders who are very aware of their own, very self-aware in terms of their own strengths and weaknesses, and have had people come in who have essentially royally fucked so many areas of the business. And it's so shit. And I also just think that like, it's so tough because I'm sure you've gone back over this so many times being like, how would I have avoided this? And how should I have done this? And like, even if this came in, how could I have stopped this happening? And I also just think that like in those moments, you were trying to make the best decision for the business by bringing a more expensive person in, by saying, do you know what? Maybe I am a bit trigger happy on these things. So I'm going to bring this person in. And at the end of the day, you have such a superpower in knowing your customer, knowing the social media landscape, knowing how things trend, all of this, that you actually probably had a particular superpower beyond even the best merchandisers and CFOs in terms of knowing, do you know what? I'm going to be able to make that one product go viral. Yeah. And that was probably what made the business do so well for so long, because not just making it viral, but making it profit from being viral is a whole different thing. Like the amount of businesses you'll see that go viral for something and they can't get that product in within 9 months is like, it's a real strength to be able to not just make something viral, but be able to make yourself profit from that. And that was something that you guys were so good at. So it's such a shame for something else and you trying to make the right decision and trying to bring like quote unquote grown-ups in, which I've seen happen everywhere, that actually your gut instinct was right. 100%. Like your gut instinct would have been right.
Because that was the thing. Like, I had so many older people. Because when you are a young founder, right, you probably get this all the time. People do just assume that you don't know what you're doing. And so it was like the outsider influences were like, it was like, I think my bookkeeper at like the accountant firm that we use was like, I think you should bring in a CFO. And it was kind of like, do you just want a CFO because you want to make your life easier? Because obviously they're going to have the financial stuff done for you. Because kind of when I look back on it now, I'm like, we didn't really need one.
Right, we were doing fine.
We were actually fine. Like we were fine. And obviously like fractional CFOs, like literally was $6,500 a month salary. And it's like, it's not cheap. And it was interesting as well, because as soon as the business started to fail, he left.
Of course.
Yeah. Because he knew he wasn't going to get paid. And it was like, almost like he just caused a storm and was like, I'm out. It was wild. So then that was also what was so horrible, was that then I was dealing with probably one of the most intense financial situations that I've ever been in, and not having a clue what I'm doing.
So when did that happen? Like, when did he leave?
So he left in about, I think it was like, was it like June, July, around there? And that's when, so, you know, me and we were my right-hand man at SLA at the time, like we did do the best that we could to like keep it going. But I think had we had someone who had a real eye for like forecast, I would have liquidated the business there and then.
Right.
Because I think we kept thinking we could get ourselves out of it. But I think had we actually really had someone come in and look at the financials, they would have been like, you physically cannot get yourself out of this.
Right. So you kept,
because like the debt was piling up, you know, like we were, like I had to pay my employees' salaries from my personal bank account like 4 times. Because that was the kind of founder I was. I was like, I will not let the people, because the people that work for me were like family, you know? And that's the one thing, like even now, like it does matter, like the thing that makes me sad when I talk about the closure of SLA is the people that it affected, like the people that work for me, because that was why I kept it going for as long as I did, because I didn't want people to lose their jobs. I didn't want customers to not get refunds. I literally put myself into personal debt to keep the business going, to not let people down.
Yeah.
Really, because actually it should have, the business should have been liquidated in probably May last year, I reckon.
And so from that point, because obviously you're having significant trouble around this time last year, and then, you know, you're hitting a point where you're starting to have to pay people from your own personal bank account, which I also think, like, knowing what payroll costs is a lot of money.
Yeah.
What happened from there? Like, you obviously kept fighting until the end of last year, I'd assume.
Yeah, I kept going. I think the thing I really realised was, like, my mental health was horrendous. Like, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I lost so much weight. I just was so unhappy because I felt like everything I was building was just crumbling, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the support system that I was used to having for 8 years, which was obviously my ex. He wasn't there. So I would come home, I'd sit on my sofa alone, like, with all these, like, this shit going on, just feeling like the biggest failure. And, like, that is heavy. That's a lot to deal with when you can't even, because obviously I have friends I can talk to, but you know what it's like. Unless you own your business and have to pay payroll, no one will understand the pressures of having to pay salaries at the end of the month. And that was when it was really hard for me, when we would have months where I was literally like, I was like, I will do whatever I have to do to pay these salaries. Even if the business can't do it, like, I will make sure that they get paid, because I just couldn't. But looking back on it now, I'm like, the fact that the business couldn't pay the salaries was probably the biggest sign to be like, you should have liquidated it, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But it just, I don't know, I just felt like SLA was everything to me. I wasn't just going to give up on it. And I kept fighting. And the problem is I kept bringing in, like, different people who were, like, offering help. And to be fair, I did have so many amazing, like, outsider people that tried to help and do things. But I think almost having that noise maybe helped it. Not helped, it's probably not the right word, probably kept it going for longer than it should have.
So why did you keep pushing past that point? I can understand it. I know.
I think for us, the problem that I really had, which I think was why I kept it going, was Q4 was notoriously our best time. Mm-hmm. So I kept thinking, if we can just get to Q4, we'll be fine. We can turn it around. But it was just constantly, like, the battles that just kept coming up, and, like, the money chasers, like the debt collectors that started chasing, like, and that is so intense when you've got, like, people constantly ringing because you owe everyone money. And we were obviously still in this legal battle with the manufacturer, which was costing me money personally and the business. And then, we got to, like, I think it was literally 2 weeks before Christmas, one of the creditors was like, you need to pay us the 50 grand within 2 weeks or we're going to come for you. So that was like, I know it's heavy before Christmas as well.
Like,
you know, when you're just
Christmas.
a bit like, I was just dealing, like, and this was constant. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times where it was like life just wasn't fun, you know? You know, when everything was so intense, I was just like, so it got to January. And I think it was literally, I remember my manager / best friend, Anthony, he was just like, you are a shell of a human. Like, I'm genuinely so worried for you. My mum was literally sleeping at my house at this point. She was like, I don't want to leave you on your own. Because I was just unwell, basically. And he was like, you have to make a decision as to what you're doing here. And I just literally, like, I remember I just woke up the next morning and I was just like, I'm done, I'm out.
Yeah.
I just couldn't physically take it anymore because it was just so intense.
I'm not surprised. And, like, I know, first of all, you're such a good person. You can tell that you have such a good heart. And I think that that really comes out in those really tough times because you could have shut it down way earlier. And not only did you want to keep that going for, you know, what you'd built and what you put money into and what you'd seen as your future. Same with any other thing. Like, same with us talking about the breakup last year. Like, it made sense for you to fight for that.
Yeah.
Not only that, but also people's livelihoods. I literally totally understand it. And I think that listening to you talk about it, I think it's so unfortunate, and I'm sure everyone listening to this feels the exact same to me, in that I would literally want to like fight the manufacturers. Like I literally want to, I'm like fucking baring my teeth.
It's
like,
so bad.
As in, it's so, I hope they feel shit.
And it's so funny because they were one of the people that were like chasing their money.
Of course they were.
And I was just like, and also in a really weird way, they were probably the only people, because obviously when you put your business into liquidation, obviously all your creditors like get notified that basically they're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
And they were probably the only ones that I was like, can't wait for you to get that letter.
Right.
To be like, there's no money, so you're not getting paid.
And you know it was also because fashion can be a slimy business, and a lot of the time it's not, but a lot of the time it really is. And you just know as well that like they were cutting corners. They were doing that because it was
exactly
cheaper.
what they were doing.
Yeah, and they knew as well, I have no doubt they knew that you were what they consider to be a less experienced founder, and that they probably saw things that you didn't have in your contracts.
Yeah.
Like they probably saw
I don't even think we had a contract with them.
Right. But like that's the thing, like as in there are so many things that you as someone with a good heart and like in good faith with other people would never do to them. And then you go out into this wild west, and they, first of all, they should have got you to do a contract because that protects them as well. The only reason they would have not done that is to violate it. Is a bold thing for me to say, but I like stand by it.
Yeah.
Because you put contracts in to protect both parties, and them not doing that, the person it benefits is them, because they know what they've got on their side. And like that is so, I have no doubt that everyone listening to this is like, that is so fucking unfair. And like what's happened to you over the past few years is so fucking unfair. Like, you know, when you see things happen to people and you're like, like why do bad things happen to good people?
I'm
and
like, what's that TikTok where it's like, if I have any more character development, my character is going to turn into a villain.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I'm done. I'm out.
We're currently at like villain origin story. So like if we could perhaps not.
Yeah, literally. Like, when did I sign up for the war?
Yeah, exactly. Like I wanted the soft girl package.
Like,
I don't know. Yeah, but like I'm so sorry that happened to you last year. And like there's obviously like part of me that knows and feels what you went through, because I nearly had a business in liquidation. But like even at that point, I remember one time like walking around the park, and this was at a point I'd forced myself out the house, and I'd been like, you have to leave. Like you have to get up from your computer. And I just remember walking around and being like, what's the point? Yeah. Like, as in literally, like, I just remember like the depths it takes you to. I just remember just like walking around and just being like, but this is what I was doing, and like this is what I wanted to do. And I just remember that. Yeah. And like, so I know, like I know the depths that takes you to.
Yeah.
And needing to both have that mental space where you're trying to basically deal with the second enormous heartbreak and grief of the year, and then also fix it at the same time, must have just sent you into absolute overdrive. It's like pouring from an empty cup, but like times a million, because you also don't know how to fix it, and you're also getting yourself into more debt whilst doing that. At the end of it all, I'm so sorry it happened to you, but I'm glad you made the decision you did. Yeah. When you did. Yeah. Because I don't know, how do you feel looking back on that decision? Because I can imagine it's so strange looking back from such a...
I feel, in a way, I think making the decision... Well, I mean, it had to be made. I didn't have a choice, basically. I was so like, because I think that's the thing. I felt so beaten down by the end of it, because it was just constant, like, no's. You were up against everything. That it just, there was, I think that I am such a, like, will see it through to the end kind of person. So for me to fully make that decision, it was very clear that was it. There was nothing else I could have done. It was like, I have to just hold up my hands and go, I'm out.
Yeah, and also thinking about it, you never would have known, for example, if you'd shut the business in May last year, you could have been sitting here in September being like, I never should have done that. Like, that wasn't me.
Yeah, 100%.
I am a fighter. Like, I am the person, I'm going to see it through to the end until I'm in a pickle. Yeah. And like, that is how I'm going to do it. And like, it's clear that you did this with such like you at least kept you and who you are. And after the point where you had external influences who didn't lead this business to a good place, you then were able to take that back internally and be like, we're doing this my way. This is how I'm going to try and fix it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least I knew I fought for it. Do you think that how public your business had been influenced you trying to fight for it for longer?
It definitely did. I think as well, like, I fought for it for so long as well, because no one will believe in your business the way that the founder of the business believes in it. That's a given, right? So I had, like, obviously, I did have people that would be like, I think, you know, you should kind of do this. But I just was sitting there going like, SLA cannot go. Because I think the problem was I would look back on it and I was like, it was successful. It saw year-on-year growth. It was literally like the year, just 2 months before like the manufacture stuff happened, we'd made our first like decent profit. We did like 250 grand in profit. Our EBITDA was up. Like, it was on paper amazing.
Yeah.
So because it was crazy to me how quickly it went wrong. And that's what I think was probably the thing that shocked me the most, was how fast it can fail. Because it was like, we were literally successful, so successful. And then it was almost like overnight, it just failed. So I think that was the other reason why I kept going for so long, because I was like, SLA shouldn't go, because it should. And it was interesting because it's funny how once I announced that it was going, suddenly I had all these investors coming out of the woodwork going, I would have invested in this. I believed in it. I saw the success. And I was like, where were you 6 months ago? But obviously they wouldn't have known because I wasn't talking about it. But it was a little bit like, I do think there was an element that actually it probably could have been saved. But I was so mentally exhausted that I had made my peace with the fact that it was going. But I think I definitely also, as you say, I kept it going because the fear of saying I've lost my business was horrible. Because I don't know anyone who has publicly put their business into liquidation. And like, everyone was always like, oh, you're so successful with SLA. And like, obviously, again, it was a massive ego thing as well. I didn't want to be, having just gone through this breakup publicly online, I was like, oh my God, now I'm going to be the poster girl for failing in business, you know? And obviously when I was in a really negative headspace as well, I was just like, I am just literally a failure. Because it was like, you can't go through all of that in a year and not feel something.
Of course.
Now I'm a bit like, thank God it's all happened in a sense, because like the breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me. And like, thank God that happened. And so in a weird way, like the breakup has made the business easier, because I'm like, I know the way I feel about the breakup will be how I feel about the business. Sure. And it's kind of like, because everything that you lose you lose it for a reason.
Right.
You know,
you
literally, and that's what I am such a believer in now, is that when something leaves you, it's because it wasn't meant to be. And whether it's a person, a business, whatever it is, I can't begin to tell you the level of like, I used to be such a control freak, and that control freak aspect of me has completely disappeared, because I'm like, what will be, will be. By force. Literally. Like, I understand that now more than anyone. I'm like, you can't control anything. You literally can't control anything. All you can do is control how you react to what's happening in life. So I think actually learning that and just letting go has been the best thing that's come out of all of this. Like, I feel like I am so laid back now, I'm horizontal, which I love. I'm literally like, nothing almost phases me anymore. I'm just like, cool.
It's crazy how life sometimes teaches you such violent lessons.
Violent.
You're like, could you not have like, but the funny thing is, because like I always feel this about my things. It's like, oh, life actually did tap me on the shoulder a few times and I just would not listen.
Well, it's like the Saturn return thing. My Saturn return was literally, I got gut punched by the universe. Because I think up until, you know, even the relationship, I was like thinking that it was a great relationship. It wasn't. The business, it was successful, but it was so stressful. And it's almost like the universe was just like, you need to sort your shit out, you know?
Yeah, and it kind of, I don't know, I'm still obviously really sad and sorry for you that you had to go through that, but at the same time I do also think that there was this aspect of it where it's kind of like you clearly needed this big like skin shedding, like this big like new era, like moving on to the next thing. It was so intertwined with the past era of your life, like the past season of your life was very much dictated by, you know, thinking one thing of your life and thinking it had to look like one thing and had to be one thing. And I think that actually being shown so clearly, not only does it not have to look like that, but actually what you thought was success in this direction, being with the wrong person, having a business that actually drove you insane all the time, just because that looks like success in labels, it was not actually success from how you were feeling. And actually seeing that from a few months down the line is very helpful and validating.
Yeah. I feel like it's mental to me now how much I live by the motto of like, I care so much more how my life feels than how it looks. And I think when you've grown up with a job in social media, especially when you're young, you want everything to look at my car, look at this, all very like showy offy, you know? And I think that is just the nature of social media. Now I'm like, I literally couldn't care less what my life looks like online. I'm like, as long as I feel like I'm having a great time, that's literally all I care about. So I think when you go through such hard times, when you suddenly feel a sense of peace, you're like, I just protect it.
Yeah, and you're right actually, because I think that sometimes probably when my life has looked the best, it's actually felt the worst.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
And I think that we're so used to fighting for what is perceived to be successful, or what is perceived to be like the end goal, or what is perceived to be like this lifestyle that you're meant to be living. And at the same time, it's obviously the wrong metric, because it's like, you know, you're living it for you and you're doing that so that you can feel better about yourself. So if you don't feel better about yourself, like how about we just don't do that? Like we live a different type of life. But it is so true. And I think it is such a lesson in like how you see other people online and how you perceive them and how you think about them and how you compare yourselves to them. Because you're right. Like so many of us are fighting for this version of success that we're told is going to look a certain way, and not even taking 2 seconds to ask ourselves, do I like this version of success?
Yeah.
Like I've been fighting for fucking years, doing more and more and more and like more things and like trying to be more impressive and all of this. And it's like, actually what's made me happy is like, don't get me wrong, I fucking love building things and like I love having a good idea and pursuing it. Those aren't the best times though.
No.
Like those aren't the best times. And like the like shit storm of stress and like 100 miles per hour and feeling like you're constantly being beaten while you're down. Like, is that success? Like you might tell me I look successful, but like, I don't know, 6 months ago when I literally like couldn't get out of bed, like just is that success? And it's funny. I can imagine you've got a lot of clarity on that now.
100%. And I feel like I felt like having a business was important to make me feel successful.
Sure.
But actually, I feel more successful in a really weird way now that I don't have it. I think it's because it just has changed so much about how I look at success, and also just the way that I look at life. I'm like, I just want like calmness. You know, and I don't think you get that with Ryan. I mean, don't get me wrong. She'll be back. I'm sure I'll do something again, but I won't be doing it on my own. I tell you that much for free. Anyone who wants to start a business with me, let me know, because I don't want to do it on my own. I think there's such strength in, you know, joining forces with someone where they've got what you don't have. And I think I'm going to be the first person to admit that, like, I can't run a business from like the business head side of things, because it's just not my expertise. So if I did something again, I'd want to be like, I'm going to do this, someone can do that, and we'll create something amazing. But like, I can't.
Right.
I just don't physically think I could do it on my own again.
The only caveat I would say to that is I do think you will always know the customer better than anyone else. Because I think that one thing that I didn't realise was one of my superpowers, and again, like trusted people who I shouldn't have trusted, was based on the fact that when you build your own audience, you build that in the same way as you're building a customer base. So you build them based, you know their likes, you know their dislikes, you know what gets them riled up, you know what doesn't, like all of this. And I still thought that people who were like customer experts and marketing experts would know better than me. And actually that it's not the case, because I built that audience step by step, like brick by brick. So I know that better, and so do you. And I think that that's something that all founders, especially when you're quite self-aware and like can be maybe a little bit too humble, are often like, no, you know this better because you know the science behind it. And actually it's like, no, I promise you I can predict that to a T.
I think that's why the entrepreneur in me is like, I will do something again.
I know you'll do something again.
Because SLA was a success. You know, I did create something that was worth millions and it was really successful. So it's like, you can't just put that to bed. But I think it's like, I'm almost just like, you know, when you just feel like you've been through like a storm and you come out the other side, you're like, I'm just going to chill here for a bit.
As you should. Honestly, as you should. It's the same as like a breakup. If you had like a rebound business right now, I'd be like,
honestly,
let's have a little sleep.
That would literally what it would be like. It would literally be a rebound business and no one needs that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so what have the past few months looked like for you? Like creatively, in terms of business, in terms of just living your life?
I feel like I have had the best couple of months, like even just like the last 2 months. I feel like I'm slowly but surely getting back to like myself. But when I say that, I feel like there is a version of me now that's completely new.
Of course.
It's almost like, you know that Taylor Swift song where it's like, Taylor can't come to the phone right now because she's dead. I feel like it's like Sarah Ashcroft,
about you.
the old Sarah is dead. Like she's not available anymore because I have changed so much, but I love this version of me now. She's so much better than the old version.
Can I say, this is weird for me to say, but I think that, you know, okay, so you obviously had this breakup last year and you could have, it's been a year.
Yeah.
So you could be, I don't know, with someone and it could be like a long-term thing or whatever, like already. And you could be the same person you were last year, but just with these learnings from a breakup.
Yeah.
I actually think the fact that you had this breakup and then had the business going into liquidation, and then you also must have changed so much as a person in those times through both of those things. Like, I hate to say maybe this had to happen because I don't think it should have happened to you, but I also think that like you are not just the person that you needed to be in business, and that has changed entirely, but also the person you needed to be in terms of like being ready for whatever your next relationship might look like, and whatever might, like, someone might have stepped in within that like 6 months and it might have just not been right because actually it's not who you are destined to be, whereas now you've actually gone through so much that's made you this new version of yourself. It's like if you put you back now in your previous relationship, it wouldn't fit at all because you're literally not even the same like breed.
Honestly, if I bumped into my ex right now, he'd be like, who are you?
Right.
I'd be like, yeah, you literally don't know me. Weird, because I'm so different. But I think, and actually that's what's quite interesting, is that the other thing as well, because obviously the business stuff was going on, like I didn't date, I didn't do anything. So like I literally just was like alone, which I think helped because I had like a full year where I was just on my own. And actually I think that was a good thing because I just literally, like, my friends were like, you're gonna start dating, and I was like, I can't even get myself out of bed, let alone like deal with someone's like son right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, because life is a lot easier when someone's son's not stressing you out.
Right. Yeah, no, that is so true. I feel like you've unfortunately had to go through like a fast track kind of like rebirth.
Yeah.
But at least it was fast tracked. It could have been that you had the breakup and then like 2 years get back on your feet and then you were like
literally
knocked down
what my mum said to me. She was like, in a really weird way, you've kind of got to be grateful that it's all happened in the space of a year, because as you say, imagine if I'd kind of gotten over the breakup, was starting to feel amazing, and then lost the business, it would have been worse.
And also imagine if the breakup hadn't happened and you would have gone through this, you might have been like, actually I would put money on the fact that you would have been such a different and stronger and more kind of like understanding, empathetic, robust like person that would never have like, it wouldn't have even made sense in that relationship.
No, well, I think also I was laughing with my friends about this, being like, even if I didn't go through the breakup last year, this would have broken up the relationship.
Sure.
Like, there's no way I could have gone through what I went through with the business with my ex. He would have been as useful as a chocolate fireguard. We would have been like, we literally, no matter which way round it went, everything was going to end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's quite funny.
So just rip off the Band-Aid. You're like,
literally.
My life lesson is have all of your big issues in one year.
In one go.
Just have 1 year where you set it aside and you say, this is my shitstorm year, and I'm going to pull the rug out from under myself in like 7 different directions.
Because there's also nothing that humbles you as much as going through that stuff all at the same time. And it's like, I've always been like a very friendly person, but I can't describe how it's just made me like soft now, because I've been so humbled by everything but I love how it has softened me, because I'm so much more emotional now. I really talk about my feelings with my friends. I never used to do that, because obviously when you're in the lowest of low, you have to talk about your feelings, right? Whereas before that, someone would go, how are you? Even if I was having a bad day, I'd be like, oh, I'm fine, how are you? But now I'm like, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And I like unpack everything. Do you know what I mean? Which I love.
Yeah, you've been through it's your chrysalis year. Unfortunately, the chrysalis was a little bumpy. It fell off the tree.
Yeah.
But here she is. She's a butterfly.
Here she is. I know, exactly. Honestly. And I just love it. And also I love it that it's happened as I've turned 30 as well. So it's like this new decade.
Yes.
And like, I'm hoping that like now I'm ready for just good things to come into my life.
I see it for you.
Please.
You are now the person that for some reason the universe needed you to be, and for some reason it just like slapped you sideways to get you there.
Yeah, it really did. And I'm like, cool, right, okay, that's it, that's enough now.
And you spoke on YouTube when you kind of talked about the business going into liquidation. You spoke about how you hadn't known before how expensive going into liquidation was. I would love to speak about that a little bit, because as we talked about when obviously we asked you to come back on the podcast, none of this is talked about anywhere near enough, and people aren't open and honest. And you, if anything, are open and
Almost
honest.
too honest.
So I would love to hear that from you, because I think that it is important. Like, it's important to know these things.
Especially because if anyone is listening to this and their business is going through liquidation, like I would have loved, all I wanted at that time was someone to be like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And actually, like, going into liquidation seems really scary, but the liquidation lawyers do everything. So you just basically have to have a conversation with them and say, this is what's going on. I feel like I need to put my business into liquidation. They go, cool, we will take it from here. And I think that was the thing that was so scary for me. It was the unknown, because I thought, like, is it going to be this like complete, like, I don't know. I just didn't know what to expect, but it was so easy that I was almost like, oh, okay. And so, but the only thing is the cost of it. It was literally like, we were originally quoted like $6,000 just to go into liquidation. But then if you want to go into administration, it's 25 grand, which is crazy. But then because we had obviously like customers that were owed refunds and they have to deal with like a lot of creditors, it then went up to 12 grand. So I had to pay 12 grand just to go into liquidation, which is comical when you literally go to someone, we have no money. And they're like, cool, it's going to cost you 12 grand. And I was literally, me and my mum were sat on this call and I just like grabbed her leg, because I was just like, where is this money coming? And again, I then had to pay for it personally. And it was just like another thing where I was just like, oh my God.
What happens if you can't pay? You go into bankruptcy, I assume.
I guess, I don't know. And this was the thing that was so funny, because I literally said this to the lawyer. It was just kind of like, what do we do if people can't pay? And he just kind of like laughed and didn't really answer it. And I was a bit like, I'm assuming you go into bankruptcy. I mean, you're going to have
a payment plan, or like there's something like that.
But the problem is, like, the lawyers won't take you on to liquidate your business unless you pay them. So you have to pay like an upfront part of that for them to do the process. So I literally don't know what happens if you can't pay.
Well, I'd assume based on the fact that if you didn't go into liquidation and you weren't paying people, then they could start suing you. I'd assume it's always cheaper to be like, no, we're going to go into liquidation so that we formally don't need to pay you anymore because we can't pay any of our creditors. But that is quite
so it's almost like stressful. Even just something to know that, like, if you're thinking about going into liquidation, you almost need to be prepared to go into liquidation.
Right.
It's almost like you need the money to liquidate. But I must say, the process of going into liquidation has been so much better than I thought.
Okay.
Because it's like once the lawyers take over, any of your creditors legally can't speak to you, but also a bit awkward in the sense that you also can't speak to them. And that was the thing that was really hard, because I obviously announced it online, and the thing I was so afraid of was the fact that I knew that we owed customers refunds. But it's when you have a business that's like a big fashion business, that's inevitable. Like, you know, when people like Misguided went into liquidation, the amount of customers that were owed refunds, people that owed money, it just happens. And I tried everything within my power to make sure that that didn't happen. And that's why I think as I said, I kept the business going for as long as I did, because I didn't want people to be out of pocket. But they then obviously, I had loads of people coming at me online for, like, you know, being like, you've stolen my money, like, how fucking dare you. It was like so aggressive. And the worst thing was I couldn't even reply to them because legally I can't. So it was like, I wanted to like fight my corner or like even just apologize, but you can't, like, because they are a creditor and you can't speak to them. So there's just like legalities around the whole thing where you're like dealing with it mentally, you're dealing with the fact that you've lost your business. There's so much, and then also what I then had to deal with was obviously this like barrage of like online hate as well.
Was there a lot of online hate?
There was a lot, in the sense, I mean, there wasn't a lot. I suppose it's like, you know, like with anything, when there's negativity, it's louder than the positivity. And I think obviously I was in such a fragile state. And I think when you know that you personally put yourself into debt to keep the business going to avoid customers. Like, you're just a bit like, you have no idea how hard I tried to make this not happen.
Yeah, both of us would rather this have not
And that was the thing.
I promise you.
The thing I think I wanted to almost get across is, it's like, I didn't want anyone to be out of pocket, but like, I lost everything. I lost my business I spent 6 years building, you know?
Yeah.
And I know it's hard when people are owed money, but it's hard when you literally lose everything as well. So
yeah, no, I can't imagine what that must have been like to go through. And also because it's so clear that you didn't want that to happen.
No,
of
and it's
course
not
you
like
didn't
I was
want that to happen.
actually
So you're
stealing people's money.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think also people online couldn't, like, I totally understand the frustration of buying something and wanting to return it and then realising you can't and all of this. I completely understand. I also think that people online can be lose all empathy pretty quickly. And I think that must have been very hard to go through, when on top of kind of explaining to people that something you started is now not there anymore, and in your eyes it's failed and it's not what you wanted it to be, and all of this at the same time, just taking this like barrage of like, you're also a terrible person because I can't return my blazer, is not what you need.
This is why, as I say, I'm like, I'm done now. Like, we can't go through anything else. She's out.
And that week where you put it up on Instagram, what was that like? Because I can imagine it was relieving and traumatic at the same time.
It was, to be honest, I feel I hate that when we talk about the negativity and not the positivity. I have never experienced so much support. It was unbelievable. Like, there was so many people just like, I was overwhelmed with support, and people just, I don't know, I just didn't expect people to take it so well. Not that I thought people were going to be like, lol, you failed, but it was just so amazing, you know, when you see your community come together and like support you, even in something that feels like a failure. It was a lot, I think, as well, because obviously it was kind of like, I had the same messages from people that maybe had messaged me when I'd gone through the breakup. So it felt like it was bringing up a little bit of like emotional trauma again from like having to, I don't know, because a lot of people were messaging, and I know they wouldn't have meant this in a horrible way, but it was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that you've dealt with a breakup and now you've done this. And it was like, but I was like, really, I'm good. Like, I am good. I promise I'm fine. And I think actually announcing it was the relief I needed.
Yeah. And was there anything about the kind of online perception or perception of friends that maybe didn't know, like hadn't been as close to you, that kind of hadn't known what you were going through? Was there anything that surprised you?
I think there was a lot of shocked people, because I don't think anyone knew. Because obviously, why would they? And that's what I think is a really important takeaway from all of this, is that people could have come to my Instagram. Yes, I'd gone through a breakup, but people could have come to my Instagram for the entire of last year and had not a bloody clue what I was going through. And it's the perfect example of like, you can make your life online look like whatever you want it to look like, and you can be going through so much in the background. So I think I had a lot of just people being like, I cannot believe SLA's gone.
Yeah.
I think it was shock more than anything.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely was very shocked, and I'm the type, you know, I know what can happen behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So like, I know how you probably couldn't shock me with much when it comes to that. But yeah, it was building a growing, profitable fashion business is not something that even most fashion business owners do. Like, you just, getting profitable in fashion is extremely hard.
Yeah.
Doing that while growing, extremely hard.
Yeah.
So like, what you did was, regardless of anything else, such an impressive feat. And I think that to me, that was why it kind of set me back. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I think I was like having breakfast, and I was even like, oh my God. I hope at least that people's empathy a little bit, even though some people's might not have been, was able to like actually shine through. And
100%, like massively. Yeah.
And obviously we've spoken about the fact that then 2 years or actually kind of 1 year, because it happened really within 1 year, you've had these huge life changes, and huge life changes that have had a big impact on not just how you live your life day to day, but also kind of your identity, I can imagine.
Yeah.
How has what you've just been through changed how you see yourself and your kind of self-worth and self-identity?
I feel like I think the number one takeaway that I've taken from it is like the level of resilience I have within myself and like how strong I am. And I think actually I love that I'm now like, I feel like I can actually take on anything at this point, which I love. I don't want to yet. That's not an invitation. But I feel like I've always been a very strong person. And even my mum said, she was like, honestly, she's like, if there was anyone in my life that I know that could have put up with what you've put up with, it was you, because you have always been like a tough cookie from like a young age. Mum was like, I didn't want you to go through this, but like my sister, if she'd gone through this, she'd be in a mental asylum. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm close, but I'm not quite there. But I think, so I feel like I've learned I'm really strong. I also feel like priorities have changed. As I said, like I care so much more now about just like creating a life that feels amazing. I don't care what it looks like online. I also would love to be successful again with a business, but I'm not looking for a multi-million-pound empire. I'm just actually would love something that's quite it's really weird. It's just completely changed my perception on like success, which I'm not mad about either. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And also it's been really, I've always done this anyway, but it's also, I think the number one thing and the biggest takeaway is always diversify your income streams. Always. Yeah. Even if you own a business or not, I cannot say how important that is. Like, luckily for me, which I think blows people's minds when I say this, but I didn't pay myself a salary. So when I lost SLA, I didn't actually lose any income because I never once paid myself a salary from SLA. So for me, I think that was also kind of why it was a bit easier to give up the business. But I feel like losing the business and having to deal with all the financial repercussions and paying things and knowing that I needed to have all this money to do that, I think it's given me a real like financial, like bit of a kick in the head kind of thing to be like, thank God you were financially able to deal with this, but it's making me also realize the importance of like just financial freedom and financial stability, I think, as well.
And for anyone listening to this whose life might be currently being turned upside down, what would you tell them?
I would say control what you can control, but you have to, I think the number one thing that you need to focus on is understanding how it's affecting your mental health. Because I think when you're going through stuff, when it's so takes toll on your body and your health and everything, you have to really sit there and think, is it worth it? Do you know what I mean? Because I think you can put up with struggles, and I would number one be the person to be like, you know, keep going, fight through it. But I think your mental health is so important, and it took such a toll on mine that I'm kind of like, if you're in a situation where you feel like you're really struggling or you don't know which way to turn, I think you need to look inwards and be like, how is it affecting me as a person? Am I noticing my friends and family noticing a difference in me? Am I eating? Am I sleeping? And if the answer to those questions are like no, or like I've changed, you kind of need to think like nothing in life is worth losing your peace over, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that...
Because that goes in the same, even if it's someone's going through a shit time with a relationship. Because if the relationship is breaking down and you feel like crap and you're not sleeping, you're not eating, it's like, that's not meant for you. You need to get rid of it.
Yeah, you're so right, actually, because I was just thinking, I won't name any names, but this, like, things like this do not need to come in the form of a business breaking down or even a relationship breaking down. Like, sometimes it doesn't happen to you. Sometimes you need to be the one to decide, do you know what? If my current situation, for whatever reason, maybe it's my job, maybe it's my relationship, maybe it's literally like my family, maybe whatever, is causing me that much ag and like day to day and affecting who I am, how I show up, like I feel like a shell of myself. Yeah. Like, sometimes you need to make something break down. Yeah. Like, sometimes you need to force it to leave your life. Because you must have this as well when you've got friends that work like 9-to-5 jobs and they hate it and they're feeling awful and they, you know, they're not eating, sleeping, they don't want to come out. So, and it's like that, they might not own a business, but like that is so not the right thing for you if you're feeling that kind of way. So I feel like I just really, any advice I have for anyone that's feeling like they're struggling is, if you're in a position to be able to change that thing that is making you unhappy or causing such chaos, you're going to come out the other side and be like, thank God I've gotten rid of whatever it is. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I guess along the same lines, what do you wish you'd known about building a brand as a solo founder before all of this?
It's hard. I don't want to sit here and be all like, I don't want to, because I feel like now you ask me and I'm like, I don't want to be a solo founder again. So I feel like I can't really give advice I don't know if I'm in the headspace.
Yeah. No, I
Do you know what I mean?
Makes sense. And also I think that it's really tough in your situation too, because it's not that you were a bad founder. Like, as in, it's not like you weren't able to make something happen. And like, even if that were the case, it's like, yeah, maybe I should have known that just being a solo founder in this type of business wasn't the right thing. Like, I would not start as a solo founder again.
Yeah.
Like, as in, unless I had
like you've done it once, but...
unless I had a huge amount of, like, there's a reason why my latest business, I co-founded it. Like, unless I had a huge amount of assets behind me, I was just like, do you know what? If I lost this money, it doesn't even matter. Yeah. Which I don't think I would ever feel about anything, just because that's not who I am. Yeah, wouldn't do it. Just because, like, as a founder, you are the only person who treats that business like your lifeblood. Yeah. And like and it is, and it feels like it, and you feel it every day. And yes, everyone else might be super passionate, and they might, like, you are so fortunate to get people who work for you who really feel that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, when it all comes crashing down, it comes back to you. Like, as you said, people ran away. I had people run away.
Yeah.
Like, I had, like, people like up sticks and fucking ran for the hills. And like, it's fucking hard. Yeah. I think that that's not to say don't be a solo founder ever. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm answering my own question now, lol. But I would
do it better than I
can. You're like, I'm not over this one. But like, I would say being a solo founder and trying to build a big, life-changing, growing, sellable business is like very hard.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Like, very, very hard. And of course, being a founder in any way is incredibly hard. But like, doing it to that extent and also choosing the most ruthless type of business, because there are such different types of businesses. Yeah. Like, there's a reason why I've also started a tech company rather than another e-commerce one.
It's just like, honestly.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It's a lot. You don't need to choose the hardest roads of all the hard roads.
No.
It's like, yeah. I love that you've kind of come out of this deciding on a little more soft life. Yeah. Like, isn't it funny that people go through things and they're like, do you know what, actually? Wouldn't take the accolades.
No.
Much.
And it's funny because I feel like it's even going into like my personal life now and like dating or like whatever. I'm so like, I am protecting my peace at all costs. I'm like, if anyone gives a whiff of like disturbing the peace, I'm like, because I've just been through so much and I felt so good now that I'm like, I just want positive things.
Which is funny because I think women are usually so good at taking on so much of the stress, and therefore are willing to go through quite a lot of pain in a relationship in order to be like, this is still worth it because I'm willing to do this because I can carry this. Yeah. And actually, I think it's funny when that like changes to like, actually, my pain threshold right now is it's like this high. It's like one fingernail high. Yeah. Like, I'm actually just not going to be doing it. And deciding, do you know what? I don't need to go through shit all the time. No. Is a good decision to make.
100%. I think next steps for me will probably be therapy. I haven't started it yet. No, because I was meant to do it last year, but then it was just, almost when you feel like you probably should have been going. I felt like I was so overwhelmed, I didn't even want to talk about it. But now I've come out the other side, I'm like, there are some serious traumas that are going to need to be talked through.
You went through grief. Like, you've been through grief. Yeah. You've been through also like all of that with the pressure of online, with the pressure of like the legal sides of things, like all of that. Like, you've been through, I mean, you don't need me to tell you've been through so much. Yeah. But like, I think that I can totally understand that at the time, actually unpacking wasn't helpful when you were still packing on. You're like, I'm still building actually the trauma, so just let me build the trauma.
Build the trauma and then I'll come and talk about it. Yeah.
But I can imagine that.
It's this sense of like, I think it's this sense of loss and the sense of like rejection, even though like it's a weird form of rejection because it feels like you've kind of like been rejected from what you thought was what you were good at. It's really weird. It's like the same rejection you get from a breakup. Yeah. It's almost like what you thought you were doing well has gone like, no. Like, it's just very weird. So I feel like at some point I'll be ready to lie on a couch and talk about it. I'll stop doing it over mimosas and spicy margs with my friends. And
on public podcasts.
And on podcasts. And I'll actually go and do it properly.
Yeah. No, well, I think that, I mean, I have no doubt that will be like hugely helpful.
Yeah.
And be able to kind of like put an end to this era in your life so that you can actually move on and kind of go next, which I honestly, you've been through so much within this year. I think the processing part needs to be as long as you can actually like give yourself.
Definitely.
So before we finish, I know you've probably already answered this question before, given you've been on the podcast before, but I would love to know, maybe with all of this in mind, what you would say the best piece of advice is that you've ever been given.
I'm going to say it's not even advice I've been given. It's just what I've learned. And I did actually say this earlier, is it's like things will happen to you that you can't control. You can only control how you react to them. And I think that is such an important thing to remember, that as long as what you're doing feels true to yourself and the way you're controlling the situation is in the best way you possibly can, that's literally all you can do. And it's just the way you should show up in life, really, and just stop trying to control things you can't control.
I love that. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
and
for having me back on. Next time, guys. Next time.
It's going to be a
success story. I promise.
You are a success story, and people only want to hear about your failures because you are a success story. And I will not take any other answers to that. Thank you.